Hello, Lakeview family. I hope this video finds you well. A little later than usual, my apologies, but it's here nonetheless. Looking forward to Sunday. It is our final day of our series on the book of Revelation, which we have called Revelation Unveiled. And I don't know about you, but I've enjoyed it. Certainly, 7 weeks does not give us enough time to really cover all of Revelation and really dive into some things. And so you may feel like some things were skipped or missed. Trust me, nothing was strategically left out or left out because of fear or anything like that. Just trying to find the things that draw us through this book in a way that's cohesive and captures really the essence of what Revelation, I think, has to teach us as the final book in the Bible, which I think is important to be placed there. Remembering that as the canon was put together, in large part, it was, a gathering of people, a council of leaders in the church at that time, who looked at what texts were being used in the church and were helpful for the church. And given that time, it would have been probably 4th century-ish when the canon was put together officially. When you think about, especially the amount of persecution, the way things were happening in the church, the rapid growth, and all that Revelation speaks to in regards to the things that we'll review and talk about Sunday, but these kind of 3 primary things of a call to worship, a call to faithful discipleship, and a call to witness. And certainly in that time, those are things that were of utmost importance to the church and how the church was oriented, and what we would argue was how the church grew was that posture, recognizing who Jesus is as King and Lord, the slaughtered Lamb that has come, and all that means. And so it is the final Sunday for our series. It's also the final Sunday of the church year. And I'll talk about this a little bit on Sunday, especially with the kids. We follow the church calendar, and it begins in Advent, which will start next week. There's 4 Sundays in Advent. So that's the Alpha, right? The beginning of the church year, which is Advent. And then the end, the culmination of the church year, is Christ the King Sunday. And I'll talk a little bit about that. It's actually one of the newer additions to the church calendar. So barely 100 years old. Next year will be about 100 years from when Christ the King Sunday was kind of formally placed in the church calendar at the end of the year. And when you think about it, and we'll talk about this Alpha and Omega, the book of Revelation begins in chapter 1 with Jesus declaring that he is the Alpha and the Omega. It ends in chapter 22, which we'll read also, with Jesus declaring he is the Alpha and the Omega, which speaks to, right, creation. Jesus was there at the beginning. John talks about this and all that was made through Jesus, who was present at creation, and Jesus being the final victor and through which all is redeemed and restored and made right. And it is such a beautiful way to think about ending Revelation, that in Jesus, it's the beginning and the end. In Jesus, we have our King, and to whom our allegiance as followers is to be given through worship of the Lamb, through faithful discipleship and following Jesus for who he is as our King, and through the faithful witness of the church, and reminding ourselves that we, as Reverend Ben Beckel talked to us about, that we are the best example of Christ and of the church to the world that there is, as individuals and as the gathered body, the church. And so these are all things we'll talk about. We'll do a little bit of review and try to tie these things together, and things we won't get into. We kind of moved past for sake of time, things like the millennial reign, and there's a lot to think about that. But part of what is summarized, and part of why I think, not why I'm not diving into that, but part of that is looking at, as we have been looking at Revelation symbolically, like through the images and metaphors and what those teach us, and recognizing that when we do that, symbolism and metaphor is designed to be descriptive. And some folks are reading Revelation, some interpretations of Revelation are more prescriptive, trying to find out who, what, when, where, why. as kind of a means of understanding what it means as an kind of an end times literature, which we recognize and are, at least in this context, approaching it. This doesn't mean this is what you have to believe or all right Christians believe. This, what we have looked at is a perspective, one that I hold, and come to this book specifically as a book of symbolism and metaphor, specifically as apocalyptic literature. And so looking at those things and recognizing, how we come to this. And so the idea of, as we've mentioned before, rapture is not in the book of Revelation and really not in the Bible. There are texts that people draw this idea of Christ followers being pulled out, but we don't see that in the text in Revelation. We don't see this kind of removal of the saints, and so we are looking at this differently as a means of then how we shall live. Again, going back to those kind of three call outs of John to the church, which is to worship Jesus as the Lamb, the slaughtered Lamb, as King, a call to faithful discipleship, and a call to witness. So I've enjoyed this series. I'm excited to finish it up on Sunday and have time together, and especially to come together in this time, in this season of the year, when all kind of seems to be in tumult, politically and those kinds of things, when empire seems to be really pulling for our allegiance and our attention, to just remind ourselves, and not just once a year, but every day, that Jesus is King. But we will focus on that this Sunday as Christ the King Sunday. So I hope you join us. I look forward to being with you, and we will see you all on Sunday. Blessings.